Welcome to the Influencer's Journey. This is where we explore the transformative power of mindset and the stories behind leaders who have shaped their own path to remarkable success. Each week, we embark on a journey to uncover the beliefs, habits, and inner strength required to not just be seen, but felt as a true person of influence.
Today's topic: is there a leadership crisis? Exploring the mindset of true influence. Welcome to the Influencer's Journey Show. I am your host, Suzan Hart, and let me tell you a little bit about what inspired this topic. I'm of the belief that we are in the middle of a leadership crisis, and experts apparently agree with me. And I believe there's evidence all around us. Some of the things that we're seeing today is we're seeing that leaders in many ways seem self-motivated and focused on control, authority, all these different things. As I've watched, just all this happening in the world, it seems to be that it's very authoritative. It is very divisive, and we're seeing almost like these power struggles that don't actually have the stakeholders, the consumer, the person who the leaders are supposed to serve at the forefront of these discussions. And I think people are becoming disillusioned, people are becoming disengaged. And when they are engaged, we're kind of questioning, what is the source of this engagement? Is it something that is fueling collaboration, or is it something that's becoming very divisive? And so I wanted to jump into this topic. And when I thought of, okay, who do I want to sit down and have this conversation with? This woman came to mind. So this beautiful soul beside me, we have been, I think, in conversations for over a decade. We like to chop up on leadership, um, power, privilege, marginalization, community, excellent service, challenging services. And I think as we come together, we often stretch and inspire each other. This woman is a leadership coach. She focuses on nonviolent communication. I want you to let that land for a moment. We're going to come back and unpack that in the very near future. And she partners and collaborates with her beautiful husband, Trevor. And together, I think they make this unique and inspiring training duo. So please help me welcome my friend, Dale Allen.
Thank you so much. It's such a great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Suze.
And she calls me Suze. I am, you know, I don't even have words really. It's hard to put into words the emotions I have and the concerns I have and the um, angst I have for what I'm seeing happening around the world in our communities. And there's some great things happening, and then there's some really kind of scary and challenging things. And you know me, I believe that everything's perfect and everything is happening for our greater good, even when we can't see it. So I think we're in this precipice and this catalyst for change. And one of the reasons this discussion for me is so important, Dale, is because in the most difficult of times, the people who understand what's happening can be the tipping point for different, for change, for new. And in order for that to happen, we must engage in the conversations. We must have the challenging conversations. We must have the conversations that unearth something in us that inspires us to do different. So that's where we are, hon.
I'm in. I am so in.
And so before we jump in, Please just share a little bit about you, what you do, what inspires you to do what you do.
Thank you for that. Mm. So yes, I'm Dale Allen. I have an ache, Suzanne. I have an ache to understand and to bring people together in this understanding of how we are so wired to connect, how we long for that,
Yeah.
and how even though that's our deepest longing, that we could pass each other, that we could do things to each other that would cause pain, so, some kind of hurt, harm, and walk away and not even notice. So yes, I've been called many things. I'm a mom. I'm a partner. I'm a lover of reggae and dancing, and a lover of large talk, not small talk. And I'm very much interested in health and fitness. And I share that because um, when I think of coaching for leadership, um, I think of leadership as a this kind of like internal space where there's a time where I'll need to stand up and lead, stand up figuratively and or literally in my life. And even though I do most of my work through corporate or government organizations, I have an interest in actually tapping into that side of us that needs to get clear. It needs to be continuously in awareness,
Hmm.
right? To be able to see what we're doing that is either in alignment with our needs and the needs of the greater good. So it's really got an ache for like, how do we shift the lens that we look through?
Yeah, yeah. And to make leadership in life more holistic, if
Yeah,
is what I'm really hearing.
yeah, and harmonious.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I one of the interviews that's slotted is by a beautiful woman by the name of Joanne. She hails from Italy, and I just love just listening to her. And she has this process called Unravel, and it is about um, how we embody all the things we believe, do, and act. So it's a physical, emotional, spiritual health. And we had a conversation about how that impacts our ability to lead, and that leadership does include health, it includes wellness, it includes fitness, it includes all these different things. And just really exploring the holistic approach to leadership. As we both come from health backgrounds and fitness backgrounds, I believe that I am my brand. And I don't mean my brand in terms of just looking good and looking fit, but I am
But
my
you do
brand.
look good and you are fit.
Thank you.
Just
Thank you.
naming that, sis.
Uh, However, it's about my brand energetically. It's about my brand as I step into grace and ease. It's about my brand as I take care of my mental health, and all of it impacts my leadership. And so yeah, it's just a really interesting time, and it's a really important conversation. Um, Talk a little bit about what's happening in your world right now as you look at leadership. Because I know for myself, as I look at leadership, I'm both afraid and I'm inspired. And I think because through crisis comes change, and through crisis comes growth. And it inspired these conversations because unless we get into communication, we don't grow, expand, and become more. So what are you seeing?
Mm. I am seeing, I would say both as well, like holding both. What I'm seeing is a lot of fear,
Hmm.
concerns about the future, concerns about now. I'm seeing and hearing concerns about capacity. So people who are in leadership positions, people who realize that their role in life beyond their position at work also has them to, lead in lives in other ways as parents, as friends, as siblings, and so on, and our community leaders, community contributors. And so I'm seeing this conflict so the difference between, I really want to show up in all of these spaces in the best of my ability, and I'm feeling stretched
Hmm.
and I don't know how I'm going to do it. And then others who are quite hopeful, but also not sure, well, how do we do this then?
Yeah, yeah. Are you seeing, because I see the same thing. I think capacity is a huge thing right now as the world is moving really quickly and people are like, how do I keep up? How so definitely stretched. I think I'm seeing people that are inspired by the pace of how things are growing and seeing opportunity everywhere. I'm also seeing fear and I'm seeing scarcity and I'm seeing this whole concept of there's not enough. There's not enough for all of us. And I'm also seeing leadership that is capitalizing on the division of people, fanning the fear, uh, really kind of igniting that fear. And rather than unifying us, it's almost pointing at different groups and going, that's the cause of your challenge. And so as much as we crave connection, which I truly believe, and we crave belonging, I think what I'm seeing as a reinforcing of you belong here, but you don't belong there. You're in the in group, but you're not in the out group. And so we're seeing marginalization, we're seeing all these different things that are happening. And 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 it's a very control, authoritative, power-driven kind of leadership. And whenever I see that, I go, is that really leadership?
Mm, hmm. Yeah, I think that illusion of leadership, and maybe that's a little bit bold for me to say, but I know that many people will define leadership as influence, and so that's why we could say that it doesn't matter what our position is, that
Hmm.
we have influence, we're having an impact. It doesn't matter what age we are then, right? We have influence, we have
Hmm.
an impact. What's been striking for me, Suzanne, is to think about then, is the influence, the impact that I'm having, creating more fear, or is it creating growth, right?
So I love that you went here because as I have been doing my work, I've been really looking at the distinction between influence and force. Influence in force and power. And I think one of the really interesting things is we as a society tend to confuse force and power that comes from position, title, all these things as influence. However, when you look up influence and you look at it in my understanding, and feel free to correct me, is that influence is a ability to inspire movement from choice. People choose in, they aren't coerced in, they aren't forced in. It's not a top-down sort of thing. It is a locking arms sort of sense. And so when I say that we're seeing leadership that is very authoritative, very hand your power over to me and I will tell you what to do. I'm asking if that's really leadership. And I love what you're saying in terms of we all have influence. And I don't think we are aware that we all have influence. And one of the reasons I wanted to really unearth these conversations is to really inspire people to really tap in to their own power and influence and really understand it doesn't come from position title um, and what we traditionally see. It comes from what's the word I'm looking for? A inner knowing of self and a belief in your own ability and capacity to learn, grow, and respond to circumstances and situations.
Oh, I just love that. I just love that there's like for the listeners, and also I'm a listener as well, right? So us here having this conversation and allowing this to well up in us to actually hear it again, hey, Suzanne, for you and me. To me, it's so important to just look at that, like influence that no matter where you are right now, you're having an impact. Like how amazing. And so
Mm-hmm.
then if we choose to say, oh, does my impact inspire growth in someone else? We're not going to catch ourselves all the time, right? But
Mm-hmm.
let's say we have these conscious moments, right? These mindful moments where it's like we're asking ourselves that. Can you imagine? Can you
And I
imagine
think
what we'd create? Eh?
absolutely. And I think the piece with that is an awareness of my own influence in my own impact really changes the game. So, one of the things as I teach and train, I tell people that do not diminish your impact and influence in the room because the room is different because you are here. The new room is always different the minute each and every one of us shows up. The question is, are we aware and intentional about who we be as we enter spaces? And for me, when I got that, I was like, okay, so I'm choosing to influence the spaces I enter in a positive way because I have an understanding of my impact. And I think it is when we see ourselves as having no impact, no influence, no power, we have no ripple effect as we drop into a space. That's when we give our power over to others and say, well, they have power. So, however, we all have it, and I think it expands the more intentional we are with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's a juicy part. And I think that's the beauty of this work, this life, is to choose to have more moments of intentionality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh, well, hello everyone. That was the warm up. I was like, who you are, what are you up to? And this is where we went. So that was a warm up. So uh, as you jump on, no matter wherever you're joining us from, if there's a place for you to comment, jump into the conversation, chat us up, ask questions, let us know what you're getting from the conversation. Definitely, wherever you're looking from, share. Let other people know that these amazing leadership mindset conversations, these provocative conversations are happening. So invite friends back and let's expand this conversation. So you ready to? I got some questions for you, honey. All
Let's
right.
go. I'm ready. I'm ready.
So for those of you who are just joining us, welcome back to the Influencer's Journey Show. Our topic today is there a leadership crisis? Exploring the mindset of true influence. I'm Suzan Hart. I am sitting down with the beautiful Dale Allen, and we have a discussion for you. So, uh, the first thing I want to ask you is what do you think is at the root of this leadership crisis that we're experiencing? Like, if we were to tap down, what's causing it?
Mhm. I would say it's fear and it is scarcity. Absolutely. I think that whilst we are wired to connect, there's also the competitive side of our brain that says, I need to survive here. And I think we've taken it to another level that has us play more in disconnection and
Mhm.
competition than it does in collaboration and connection.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. And what you're really highlighting for me is the responsibility of leadership. And I am in such agreement with you. And I think the part that's creating the ripple effect of scarcity and the ripple effect of all the things that we're seeing is we also have leaders that are fueling fear, are fueling disconnection, are fueling scarcity. And in doing so, it's almost like the example that comes to mind is when a parent uses bad language or the person in authority or power uses bad language. It's almost like they give permission. They set the tone for the space. They set they set the energetic vibration of what's gonna ripple out. And for those who are feeling vulnerable and looking for guidance will latch on to that. because they're not aware of their own influence, if you will. And for those who aren't willing to latch onto that, it's almost like, okay, you're marginalized to the outside because you're not walking to the beat. And I think, why I think it's a leadership crisis is leadership comes with a high level of responsibility and accountability. And I'm not sure we're seeing that to the level that is needed.
Mhm. Agreed. You know what it reminds me of? I saw this somewhere, and I know I did the remix of it because I always do the Dale remix. But the way that I would share it now is the responsibility of leadership is to keep everyone's heart safe.
Hmm.
And when I think of it that way, and I think of the times that I can be conscious, my focus has been in conscious leadership, like be aware of in this given moment, like uh, in leadership, if we are in a position of leadership, right? Then I have a responsibility to help people grow through whatever is going on. So if
Yeah.
there's a challenge in my organization, if there's a challenge in my community, I'm helping taking them from where they are, whatever is this crisis that we're stuck in, to this place that gets us unstuck. And in that, there's so much uncertainty, which doesn't feel safe. There's conflict, like, is this the right
Mhm.
way? Things that will naturally come up. And in my work, in my way, I love to share that, oh, those are the normal milestones along the path. Those are what you're going to notice on the path. It's going to be a broken down tree that you're going to have up
Yeah.
over, but it's going to look like someone wondering, is this the way to go? And so, as a responsibility as a leader, if I go by positional, and then I'm going to go to we all are, but just like this first, is then if you're helping me, if your role is to help me along this path, but your role is also to bring it safety to me on this path as much as possible. And I think our crisis is just that, where there are folks who are in leadership positions who don't necessarily embody that because competition for them is so great. I just have to get to where I've got to get to.
Yeah.
The efficiency model of life, right? We got to get it done now, yesterday, right? That to me, I think is this the tragedy of this time of trying to navigate a time that needs more consciousness, but is faster than ever. And we were saying that 10 years ago, weren't we, Suzanne?
We
Right?
were, and part of what you're highlighting is that one of the things I've been really looking at is that, skills versus mindset or emotional intelligence. And I think part of what we see is leadership is a skill set to many people. What's missing is the necessity for self-awareness that as you lead and the necessity to be aware of the players in the room and the impact of everything on them. And so I think if I'm leading and I'm leading from my agenda and my desires, no matter what, I'm not going to navigate the impact on everybody else. And I'm not even going to be self-aware that I'm doing that. And I know for myself, when I started really digging into this work, what it demanded of me was to always almost be outside of myself, right? Looking at what's the need right now? Where am I sitting in that? What's coming up for me is how I'm going to respond or react in this situation going to serve the greater good, or is it totally self-motivated? Am I tapping into my competitive ego self, or am I really in a place where I can serve the greater good and make sure everybody is left whole? And what I remember um, being in a situation, Dale, where I was mediating a conflict between management and staff. And I remember when I walked in and people were like, well, you were hired by management, so therefore you're on the side of management. And I had to really say to them, yeah, no, I'm not on the side of anybody. I'm on the side of what's fair and equitable and what that process looks like. And if that means I have to hold you accountable or management accountable, there's accountability when we are really focused on what's the best outcome, one for the clients we serve, for the service we deliver, and that keeps people all able to collaborate for a good situation and leaves everybody feeling empowered, whole, heard, all these different things. And that's work.
It is absolutely work. It is. You know what it makes me think of though? The other day I was with this organization, and it's a police organization, and I was sharing with them, you know, if we really like just decided that a unifying way, so you used that word earlier, but if we unify before we diversify, we would things would totally shift if that was our work. If we would kind of went, oh right, like here, if we have a challenge and we know if we're in a leadership position, uh, we're actually going to help. Where our role is to deal with challenges, so we help massage them. We soften them up a little bit, and we lessen the intensity of them by the work that we do, the influence that we have. It made me think of both of our backgrounds, why I'm so interested in health and the body, because when there is a challenge, there is a crisis in general, it shows up in my body. Like the answers are there, the messages are there. And and I think there's something too, if we were to look at then maybe for leadership, our role is maybe we've just got a role in health, right? And then if you think of everyone's a leader, meaning everyone has influence and impact in a space at any given time, you go, oh my goodness, we are all responsible here for health,
Absolutely. For the health of the whole.
the whole.
Absolutely. And and in I'm trying to put language to what's bubbling
There's
up.
so much, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's bubbling up for me. Um, you know, when I think of the whole, and I think of you said we need to unite before we diversify.
Mhm.
I think there's such power in that simple statement, because I think that one is what creates unity is core values. And when you look at leadership and you look at people flipping and flopping and I'm hot today, cold tomorrow, I believe this today, I believe that tomorrow, all these different things, you realize there's not a core center of values that guide us. I know we all have an inner compass that tells us when we're on track and when we're off track. And so if we're united on these core values, then difference becomes a discussion. And I think because we aren't united on core values, difference becomes dangerous.
Mm,
And so if you have a difference of opinion, I'm not willing to explore it because I'm threatened by difference, versus if I have core values that guide me, I can sit with those core values and also explore difference. And so it is such a subtle piece, but it is so necessary, you know, that values aren't these things that we write and put on a shelf and go, oh, yeah, these are the core values of the organization. And they are living entities that we must walk with and talk with and guide with. And when we have those, then difference becomes possible, because difference is no longer this threatening thing. And I think the other thing that you're really alluding to is that we also are in an environment where difference is bad or wrong. And we're both women of color, and I know that people will tell me, well, I don't see your difference. And I'm like, is that a compliment? I know it's meant to be, Because really what you're saying is, I don't see what's wrong with you in your difference. You're just like me. And I'm like, oh no, you had better notice all my mocha color beauty over here with my locks and all my stuff. Because it's not about good, bad, right, wrong. It's about what makes me unique and still able to collaborate, come together, and honor your beauty and your difference and your uniqueness. We don't live in that space. Therefore, division is very easy with leaders today.
And it's so interesting that we can misunderstand ease for safety. So it's easy to go to division, and we think that it's safe there, and it actually isn't, right?
Yeah.
And so I was really struck by you sharing that if we are guided by core values, that then difference then becomes a discussion. And even the lightness that I feel when I hear that. But if we are not, then difference becomes dangerous. And yet we know, just like you were naming, right, about your mocha color, and all of that, that there's so much to be celebrated in difference. Even that we need to do studies on this is like, and then feed it back to you so that you can be convinced that this is a good thing. I'm like, what are we doing? What are we actually doing? When people get calls to do workshops on civility or workplace respect, I'm like, really? Like, am I going to go back to grade, I don't know, kindergarten, grade two, find those, and then I'm going to package them up and give them back to you? There is something to me that is striking then what is stopping us from connecting? What is stopping us from moving from core values to uh, discussion when it comes around difference versus danger? And and
Great question.
I agree with you, hey, that core values then do become the unifier. So when I am entering into spaces and we're doing equity and diversity work, and even that is a thing where even that's so interesting. I mean, that's a whole other
You get me
topic, right?
started.
I know. I'm like, "Ugh." Um, and yes, this beautiful man who I've studied under called Bio, he says how we frame the problem is the problem. And I think when it comes to diversity and equity and inclusion, the frame that it's coming from is the problem. It is not a unifying frame. And it's actually starting from diversifying. And so we're actually starting in all the funk of it, all the messiness to then try to unify. And instead of starting with unifying a unifying way. So you talked about core values. And I often talk about, yeah, it is about values and what do we ultimately want, which is why oftentimes when I come in to do that work with teams and such, I am looking at, well, what if we say that we all want health as an example? That's the context? And isn't
Mm-hmm.
that unifying? No matter whether you've got mocha skin or not, who doesn't want that, and then looking at what are all the varieties of ways, the different ways that we approach health here. And then the interesting how the discussions come. So in essence, it is around core values, isn't it? It's around this kind of ultimate context that we're wanting to set. And oftentimes I see in leadership that I, the difference I would say between like for you and I mean this for the listeners, I just wanted to offer this to you to hear is that Suzanne, you and I get to study leadership. We get to study behaviors and dynamics and relational dynamics and power dynamics, all the things that make up the health of a team, whether it's the home team or your a social community team or your work team. We get to do that. But I'm often in spaces where folks don't have the luxury of studying this day in, day out as we do. So great that we get called in to share our expertise. But the ultimate thing here is us sharing ways to see how could you as a leader in the short time that we might have with you create this context of health, of safety, and then how do you go into embodiment?
Well, you're gonna bring me right. That's a beautiful place to kind of talk a little bit about power, title, skills, technical expertise that are often the reason people in our society um, get put in leadership positions: economic power, skill set, experience, title, how long I've been in an organization. And I always go, that's not wisdom. Um, and it has, and we know that IQ has and skill sets has nothing to do with self-awareness. So as you ask the question, how do we do this? How do you think that way to which we decide leadership is affecting us?
Mhm. And I'm just wanting to name again, so you talked about power and skills, technical skills, and so on. Yeah,
Title, seniority.
yeah,
That's how we decide leaders in today's society.
yeah.
Um,
So
and we know that just because you're good at your job doesn't mean you are able to be good with people and lead. And so there's a clear disconnect. However, that is the decider.
I've been sharing with folks, and which is why what is where I was going with what I had just shared. And so I love that you just brought that back. I think it's a tragedy, honestly, that I am responsible for people as a parent in a relationship with my partner, as a leader in my business, that people can have a positional title of leader, to have taken their technical skills through their education, where someone can say, now you can be responsible for people. I think it's a big tragedy that you don't have to study the human condition. You don't have to do that to be a parent, to be in a relationship, to lead people. And so when we're in organizations who, we can pop that in their ear to go, you've got people who are responsible for people, responsible for helping people move through some tough times if we've got tough
It's some
times.
pretty intense things.
Uh-huh. How are you building the human expertise? Is it only technical, really? I think it's a tragedy that that's been allowed, hey? And so now
Mhm.
when we're working with, like, we call them more conscious organizations, they're kind of going, oh, right, we have to build people expertise. We didn't even know how to do that. And it's beyond just taking this little workshop,
Well,
right?
and I think it's also so unfair because you imagine the person who's now been they're rocking and rolling in their skill set, and they're like, oh, you're now promoted to leader of people, and who goes and says, okay, wait a minute, I have no people expertise, and I don't even think people are conscious of it. And so it sets up this really unfair dynamic that then just spreads through an organization. And and so no wonder we are so challenged by this, because if I don't have the people skills and the people awareness, and the ability to navigate and negotiate human things, the human condition, if you will, I'm ill-equipped for the role. And so I do the best I can. And my model for doing the best I can is authority. That's scary.
It's very scary. And that's been the model that we've seen. We've
Hmm.
seen it through our teachers, through our parents, and then in organizations, right? I mean, it is the model. And
Hmm.
we're saying, then we need another model, don't
We need
we?
a, very different model.
Absolutely. Yeah,
We need a very, very, very different model. And it's more of a model grounded in humanity and the human condition,
absolutely.
and understanding the human condition. You know, I when I do leadership, I tell people that the first person we must all lead is ourselves. And really what I'm saying to people is the first person you must become self-aware of in terms of how your emotions, how you handle your emotions, because leadership is not defined in good times, right? Oh, the agency's rocking and rolling, we're all like things are growing and everything. Leadership is, in my mind, who are you and who do you become when there's crisis, challenge, conflict, disagreement, change, scarcity, lack of resources, fear, um, all those different things. Who do you then become? And if I can't answer that question, or I don't even have a self-awareness of my coping mechanisms, my ability to react when angry, all the things that happen, then I don't actually understand this whole concept called leadership. And I think when we boil it down to that, it becomes very evident.
Absolutely.
Right? I had a gentleman who was doing some work with me, and he was talking about how their organization, their company, big company, has been doing all these leadership skills. And I asked him, I said, how's that working out for you guys? And he says, well, this now it's pretty good, pretty good. I said, so can I ask you a question? And he goes, yeah. I go, what happens when there's conflict? Oh, he goes, oh, we don't do that very well. Okay. How about change? Well, we're just getting in a change model now, so change isn't done very well. No. Um, do people kind of change when they're stressed? Oh yeah, this. Sometimes you don't want to deal with the leaders when they're stressed. And and I said, okay. So I said, wouldn't you want power in terms of power in the most difficult times of your organization to come from those who lead? And he goes, yeah. And I said, leadership's not a skill. It's a beingness. And he was like, oh. And that's when it landed. It's a beingness.
It's a beingness.
And it's born of who you and I become when we are afraid.
Do you all feel that? I feel that. I
Yeah.
just felt that when you said that. Absolutely. It's interesting. So last week when we were working with this organization, when we were first asked to do the work, the leader was sharing that, I really don't want you to bring up like do anything that where we have to unpack what's going on. There's some conflicts and people are feeling bad. It's like, what would you like us to do? Right? And I was saying to him, that my work actually is to ask, what is the challenge? I also want you to tell me, oh, that's great, but you do great well already. Like that's already good. What's natural is that there will be good stuff and there'll be stuff that isn't so good. And I want you to tell me what you're doing well. Absolutely. But I
And
want you to also go, if we need to change, we're either amplifying what we're doing well or we're changing what's not going on. You've got to address both of them.
I think the piece that you're alluding to is that, again, I'm going to go back to our definition of difference, not good. Our definition of conflict, not good. Our definition of change, ooh, not so great. Our definition of unknown, oh. And I remind myself that change cannot happen without discomfort, conflict, and that rub. Because it's in that rub that growth happens. It's in that rub that learning happens. It's in that rub that expansion happens. So a great leader, um, from my experience, is those who actually go cause the rub and manage it well. I'm going to take care of you as we dig into this difficult situation, because on the other side of it is something that is going to be so innovative. It's going to be so expansive. It's going to be so um, access to a new level of abundance, growth, expanded identities, that we want to chart that path. And I think because we are so uncomfortable with the human emotion other than happy, all's well, when we are in community, that we can't lead in the most important times where the shift will actually occur. That will put us to this brand new place.
I am feeling everything you're saying completely.
Because I know for myself, my times of growth has been when I have worked with a manager, a leader who has gently kicked my butt, stretched me to capacities that scared the crap out of me, but held me and ensured I was whole and complete while I was going through it. And when I came out the other side, you cannot contain this girl. Because I'm like, look at me. Look what I just lived through. Oh my gosh. Have you seen me? And I think when we create those experiences for people, they're just like, okay, I'm ready for more. Because in that, we see our greatness and we see our ability to thrive and we see our ability to come through the other side. And that is sexy and attractive.
It's hella sexy and attractive.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's those moments where you go, I like me right now.
Hmm.
You see me? And it's not arrogance, it is that joy that comes from when I just became better. I walked through the fire, hit the challenge, and I came out and I'm better. That to me is leadership.
Mm,
When we guide
mm.
people through those processes and say, I know there's greatness in you.
Oh my goodness. And I feel that you can see how that would just have someone open, right? And find access the side of themselves that has that greatness. It reminds me too, I often will share that this is the path, that it's beautiful, like it's like a beautiful sunny day at work, and then there's a storm. And it could look like, you know, a miscommunication. It could look like an email in all caps. It could look like we got left out of the building like that. And then it's like, oh, but we got the key. Oh, I spoke with that person. We worked through it. You know, like those are the things that come up as storms along the way. And then it's sunny again. And then there's a massive mudslide. That is the path. And so what I find, I think when I work with organizations who I say who are working on their consciousness, their awareness, if that is the path, what is your process? Just much like you were asking that person that you were working with, what is your process from when there's a challenge? What do you do? And
Mhm.
people don't have one until there is one. What they rely on is process. So, oh, we've got labor relations. It's like, oh, you're waiting until something that is 100% going to happen. There'll be a challenge that you've got a process that you can then go send people to. I find that to be a problem. So in ways, looking at how do we build our consciousness for this now? This is what we would create now. We would say, we're going to have conflict. Yeah, there are going to be challenges. They're going to be dressed up in a tuxedo or heels. We don't know. We're
Mhm.
not even going to know it. Sometimes we're not going to know when it comes, just like you don't know when a storm will come. Although we've got meteorologists got it, but they could never be always accurate because it's beyond
And
us, you know?
and I think the thing in that is one is we know the storm's going to come and it's going to come in all colors, shapes, forms, flavors. It's going to come. Um, and we're gonna figure out a process, or we have a process. But this is, I think, the piece that creates the environment that allows people to lead, and people to risk being led. Yeah. One is that in this environment, there's going to be accountability. I'm going to hold you accountable. You're going to hold me accountable. And we have some values that we are going to hold to in terms of how we are going to show up for each other. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall down. We're going to do some things that we may not like. We may see parts of each other that might surprise each other. The key thing here is we're going to be accountable for who we are and how we show up in those moments. And we're going to be asked to clean it up, rectify it, grow through it, and come out the other end. And we're going to do it respectfully and collectively. And I think because people go to environments where they're not allowed to fail, they're not allowed to risk, they can't get it wrong. And if they do, there's authoritative consequences that aren't necessarily in a place where I'm going to teach you, guide you, give you space to recover, give you space to grow. Because that environment is not there, I think people aren't, they're afraid to put themselves and allow themselves to be vulnerable enough to go through the process to learn. I've just got to protect myself and survive here.
I totally see that.
So, what's the shift that we need to make?
I would say to see that our responsibility, first shift is to see that our responsibility is to make everyone's heart safe.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that then is to, what I talk about is taking organizations or even conversations from fear to trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then those are all
Absolutely.
just words, right? They're words, but I think if we actively focus on, fear is showing up right now, we know that it's part of the path, so that's normal. How would I move this conversation from fear to trust? If I see a mistake, it would be like, we know that when the mistake is made, it's all in fear, right? If we're going to have the conversation, I mean, no one wants to hear about something they've done wrong, but it's something we know we need to talk about. What would be the conversation that would move the fear out of it and bring trust into the conversation?
Yeah.
And when you named accountability, I would say it starts with, yes, how are we being aware of when we are operating from fear instead of trust in these challenging moments? Because the challenge is going to happen anyway.
And
What are our agreements?
I think so. And I think, when we talk about accountability, um, I think it is a scary word for most people because most people think accountability means you're wrong and there's going to be a consequence to being wrong. And who wants that? And so I know when I started this journey, one of the things I used to say to people is, let me define accountability for you so that we're all on the same page. And I said, so something will happen, as it does. My job is to hold the mirror up for you and reflect back to you who you're being, and to open up a dialogue about what you see. Your job is to take what you learn and create and recover. And recover means, oh, I need to go rectify that. Oh, I need to go apologize. I need to get into communication with this person because I left them hurt. Oh, I fell short over here. And and for me, with the groups I've worked with, I go, recovery is your opportunity to grow, learn, and expand. There's only a challenge when you're not willing to take your opportunity to recover. Then there's a bigger question. And what I've seen, Dale, is when we open a safe space for someone to recover, they're like, oh, I just created trust, right? I just created, ooh, I can trust this person to have my back and hold up the mirror and create a safe space for me to grow and do better. Because I'm going to hold up the mirror in love. Do you actually see who you're being right now? Because I know you're committed to something different. It is, I have to hold that an intention that you are here to do your best. I have to hold the intention that you have other people's best interests in at heart. And in this moment, you fell short. Can I trust that? And again, then can I ask you to step into who I know you to be? And sometimes I go, the mirrors, I'm reminding you of who you are. Because in this moment, things got messy and you forgot. And we do.
We do. And in the environments that we're looking to create, is that we would all do that for each other. Those would be the agreements, right? So I'm in, if I'm creating the space as a leader by position, that I also become open to that from my employees,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean,
And
yeah,
and I think the beautiful thing about this, Dale, is that when leadership takes on um, that energy and that weight, what I have learned is often, I mean, I've led a number of teams, and I walked into spaces and people would not know that I was the person in charge because my title isn't that relevant to me. My position isn't that relevant to me. It is my ability to move people and collaborate and cause leadership. And I think I have learned that when you lead from that place, title and position are like the very, very, very last resort. It's like, yeah, am I really
totally.
in charge? No, I'm just facilitating a process.
Yeah,
I'm the conductor who, without all these beautiful instruments, people, there's no music. I
none.
create this on my own.
You use the language causing leadership
Hmm.
intentionally.
Yes, I
Love
do.
that. I really love that. Yeah. It
Hmm.
makes me think of Terrence Real. There's a line in his book that I can't remember his book right now, which one. What he talks about is in relationships that you don't complete someone, that they don't complete you. But I know I idealized this, so I'm going to tell you my what I remember came from me that I started sharing when I was coaching is that there's something in the relationship that has you have access to expressing something that's already in you versus someone completing you. So it's what do I have access to that wasn't being expressed before? So for example, with me and my partner, I would say I'm an emotional risk taker. I will talk to anyone. I will go there. Large talk, not small talk. So I'll go right there. He's a physical risk taker. He'll jump off buildings. He'll skydive. He'll do all of those things. But then I found myself in South Africa jumping off one of the highest, not, I mean, it was not bungee, but zip lining off of one of the highest ones in the world, right? So I thought, oh, I'm accessing more of my side of adventure as a result of our relationship.
Because
It makes,
he caused it in you,
this is it, right? So
right?
that connection created that
And
ignition of this thing that's already here in
here,
me.
and this is where when you get this, leadership becomes such a beautiful thing. Because the reason I use cause leadership is I firmly believe that the only person I lead is Suzanne. That's it. Because I have no control over anyone else. So the only person I lead is myself. However, if I show up boldly, if I show up brilliantly, if I show up in my best self and I work to be my best self, I am going to be inspiration. And you know that's my word. I am inspiration. It's my reminder. I am going to be inspiration. And people, when they are inspired by who someone else is being, it's like you light a match, and it's like and it calls for something in them that says, "Ooh, you know what? I'm joining this too. I'm part of this too. Ooh, you just activated something in me that's been dormant or I didn't know existed." And it is that effect that we call leadership, I believe. That's influence. I just influenced you and I ignited you, and I ignited something that's been either unaware or dormant in you, but it's there. And then you go on and you are now in your brilliance, leading yourself with all your inspiration, and someone comes up and encounters you and they're like, they've been ignited. And I think when we lead from that place, it's energy. It's like drops and ripples, drops and ripples, drops and ripples. And you see them blending and moving, and it's fluid. And in that, there's no competition, there's just collaboration.
And what a beautiful place. And that's what I mean. Like, if we imagine that, then now if we pull out of leadership as position, we would go everyone at any time with, if influence really is that there's a time where me connecting with someone else in whatever way, whether it's in a good way, in quotation marks, or a bad way, is either igniting or squashing something.
Absolutely.
Thought that I could, well, I could also ignite more fire, which could, the fire could be more blame or shame or something, or I could ignite more joy. But the thought that we all have capacity for that to help people access more greatness in them, every single one of us. I mean, that's so juicy to me.
And I think
So
for
juicy.
me, as I look at leadership, that is exactly what it is. And so I always say I cause leadership. And it's there's this saying of I'm creating you, creating me. I'm creating you, creating me. And I think I can, when I'm in my best self, I'm creating you in your best self, and then you're creating me in my best self. And it's like this effect. And leadership doesn't happen in a vacuum. It is not, because one thing I know about title, position, authority is that it is actually not contagious. It is mine, and I'm going to hold it because it's not regenerative. When I'm in leadership and I'm creating you, creating me, it's now regenerative, and it's energy, and it's expansive. And for me, that's the distinction that we're talking about. Oh, we did that.
Oh, we did that.
Oh man, that was good. That was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
That was amazing.
So, for everyone listening, I have been sitting down with the beautiful Dale Allen. This is what we do when we get together. We just chop it up and have these just really juicy conversations that expands us both. You creating me, right?
Mm.
Last words. What do you want to leave everyone with?
The thought that everything we say, think, say, and do has an impact.
Yeah.
If we even, any moment that we're conscious of that, and we ask ourselves, in this moment, in this conversation, how can I leave it better than I found it? I think it is the biggest gift that we could give to each other that is then giving back to us.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for who you be and who you are becoming, because it's a never-ending process. I know you're going to be back because
I'm looking forward to it.
I have another topic that I need to just dive in with you. And so I want to leave everyone with a thought, because every time someone comes on the show, they activate a thought in me. And leadership isn't defined by title, economic power, or authority. It is measured by the trust you build, the vision you share, and the impact you leave behind. Dale, thank you so much. You have been listening to the Influencer's Journey show. Until we meet again, please know you are brilliant. Know you are oh so very special. And we have these conversations because the world is waiting. Blessings, and we will see you soon.
Thank you all for tuning in to the Influencer's Journey. Join us every week as we continue to explore the stories behind the leaders who inspire us all. Remember, the first person you lead is yourself, and influence is a byproduct of inspired action. Until next time, know you are brilliant, know you are special, and the world is waiting for your unique gift. This is the Influencer's Journey.